3,000 stitches. We set up the Infosys Foundation in 1996. Unfortunately, I knew precious little of how things worked in a non-profit organization. I knew more about software management, programming, and tackling software bugs. Examinations, mark sheets, and deadlines occupied most of my days. The concept behind the foundation was that it must make a difference to the common man. Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya. It must provide compassionate aid regardless of caste, creed, language, or religion. As we pondered over the issue before us, malnutrition, education, rural development, self-sufficiency, access to medicine, cultural activities, and the revival of the arts among others, there was one issue that occupied my uppermost, the Devadasi tradition that was pervasive throughout India. The word Devadasi means servant of the Lord. Traditionally, Devadasis were musicians and dancers who practiced their craft in temples to please the gods. They had a high status in society. We can see the evidence of it in the caves of Badami, as well as in the stories like that of the Devadasi Vinapodi, who was very dear to the ruling king of the Chalukya dynasty between the 6th and the 7th century in North Karnataka. The king denoted enormous sums of money to the temples. However, as time went by, the temples were destroyed and the tradition of the Devadasi fell into the wrong hands. Young girls were initially dedicated to the worship and service of a deity or a temple in a good faith, but eventually the word Devadasi became synonymous with sex worker. Some were born into the life, while others were sacrificed to the temples by their parents due to various reasons, or simply because they caught a hair infection like the ringworm of their scalp, assumed to be indicative that the girl was destined to be a Devadasi. As I thought about their plight, I recalled my visit to the Yellamagudda or Renuka temple in Belgaum district of Karnataka years ago. I remembered their green saris and bangles, the smears of yellow bhandara, a coarse turmeric powder, and their thick long hair as they entered the temple with goddess masks, coconut, neem leaves, and a kalasha, a metal pot. Why can't I tackle this problem? I wondered. I didn't realize then I was choosing one of the most difficult tasks for our very first project. With innocence and bubbling enthusiasm, I chose a place in North Karnataka where the practice was rampant and prostitution was carried on the name of religion. My plan was to talk to Devadasis and write down their concerns to help me understand predicament, followed by organizing a few discussions targeted towards solving their problems within a few months. On my first day in a district, I armed myself with a notebook and pen and set out. I dressed simply with no jewelry or bindi. I wore a pair of jeans, t-shirts and a cap. After some time, I found a group of Devadasis sitting below a tree near a temple. They were chatting and removing lice from each other's hair. Without thinking, I went up to them, interrupting their conversation. Namaskaram, Amma. I have come here to help you. Tell me your problems and I'll write them down. They must have been discussing something important because the woman gave me a dirty look. They lobbed questions at me with increasing ferocity. Who are you? Did we invite you here? Have you come to write about us? In that case, we don't want to talk to you. Are you an officer or a minister? If we tell you our problems, how will you solve? Go away. Go back to where you... I did not move. In fact, I persisted. I want to help you. Please listen to me. Are you aware that there is a dangerous illness called AIDS that you could be exposed to? There is no cure for... Just go. One of them snapped. I glanced at their faces. They were furious. But I did not leave. Maybe they need a little convincing. Without warning, one of them stood up, took off her chappal and threw it at me. Can't you understand simple Kannada? Just get lost. Insulted and humiliated, I felt my tears threatening to spill over. I turned back and fled. Upon returning home with the insult fresh on my mind, I told myself I won't go there again. However, a few days later, it occurred to me that the women were probably upset about something else and that maybe I had simply chosen the wrong time and date to visit them. So, after another week, I went there again. This visit took place during the tomato harvest. The Devadasi women were happily distributing small oval-shaped bright red tomatoes to each other from the baskets kept near them. I approached them and smiled pleasantly. "Hello, I have come to meet you again. Please hear me out. I really want to help you." They laughed at me. "We don't need your help, but would you like to buy some tomatoes?" "No, I'm not very fond of tomatoes." "What kind of a woman are you who doesn't like tomatoes?" I attempted to engage them once again. "Have you heard of AIDS? You must know that the government is spending a lot of money on increasing awareness about it. Are you a government agent? Or maybe you belong to a political party? How much commission are you getting to do this? Come on, tell us. We don't even have a proper hospital in this area, and here you are trying to educate us about a scary disease. We don't need your help. Our goddess will help us in difficult times." I stood dumbfounded, struggling to find words. One of the women said decisively, "This lady must be a journalist. That's why she has a pen and paper. She will write about us and make money by exploiting us." Upon hearing this, the others started throwing tomatoes at me. This time my emotions overpowered me and I started to cry. Sobbing, I fled from there once again. I was in despair. Why should I work on this project? Why do they keep insulting me? Where else do the beneficiaries humiliate the person working for their well-being? I am not a good fit to this field. Yes, I should resign and go back to my academic career. The foundation can choose a different trustee. When I reached home, I sat down to compose a resignation letter. My father came down the stairs and seeing me busy with my head bent close to the paper, he asked, "What are you writing so frantically?" I narrated the entire episode to him. To my amazement, rather than sympathizing with me, my father chuckled and said, "I didn't know that you were so impractical." I stared at him in anger. He took an ice cream from the fridge and forced me to sit down and eat it. "It will cool your head," he said and smiled. After a few minutes, he said, "Please remember, prostitution has existed in society since ancient times and has become an integral part of our life. It is one of the root problems of all civilizations. Many kings and saints have tried to eliminate it, but no law or punishment has been successful in bringing it down to zero. Not one nation in the world is free of this. Then how can you change the entire system by yourself? You are just an ordinary. What you should do is reduce your expectations and lower your goals. For instance, try to help 10 Devadasi live their profession, rehabilitate them and show them what it means to lead a normal life. This will guarantee that their children will not follow in their footsteps. Make them your aim. And the day you accomplish it, I will feel very proud knowing that I gave birth to a daughter who helped 10 helpless women make the most difficult transition from being a sex worker to independent woman. But they threw chapels and tomatoes at me, Kaka. I whined petulantly. I always called my father Kaka. Actually, you got a promotion today, from chapels to tomatoes. If you pursue this and go there a third time, maybe you'll get something even better. His joke brought a reluctant smile on my face. They won't even talk to me, then how can I work for them? Look at yourself, my father said, dragging me in front of the nearest mirror. You are casually dressed in a t-shirt, a pair of jeans and a cap. This may be your style, but the common man and a rural Indian woman like the Devadasi will never connect or identify with you. If you wear a sari, a Mangal Sutra, put on a bindi and tie your hair, I am sure that they will receive you much better than before. I will also come with you. An old man like me will be of a great help to you in such an adventure. I protested. I don't want to alter my appearance for their sake. I don't believe in such superficial changes. Well, if you want to change them, then you have to change yourself first. Change your attitude. Of course, it's your decision in the. He left me in front of the mirror and walked away. My parents had never thrust their choices or beliefs on me or any of my siblings. Whether it was about education, profession, or marriage, they always gave their advice and helped us if we wanted, but I made all the choices. For a few days, I was confused. I thought about the skills needed for social work. There was no glamour or money in this profession, and I could not behave like an executive in a corporate house. I required language skills of which English may not be needed at all. I should be able to sit down on the floor and eat local food. No matter where I traveled for work, I had to listen patiently, and most of all, I should love the work I did. What would give me higher satisfaction? Keeping my external appearance the way it was, or the work that I would do? After some introspection, I decided to change my appearance and concentrate completely on the. Before my next visit, I pulled my hair back, tied it and adorned it with flowers. I wore a 200 rupee sari, a big bindi, a Mangal Sutra and glass bangles. I transformed myself into the Bharatiya Nari, the stereotypical traditional Indian woman, and took my father along with me to meet the Devadasis. This time when we went there, upon seeing my aged father, they said, "Namaste." My father introduced me. "This is my daughter and she is a teacher. She has come here on a holiday." I told her how difficult your lives are. Your children are the reason for your existence, and you want to educate them irrespective of what happens to your health. Am I right? They replied in unison, "Yes, sir. Since my daughter is a teacher, she can guide you with your children's education and help them find better jobs. She will give you information about some scholarships which you may not be aware of and help your kids with it so that your financial burden may be reduced. Is that okay with you? If not, it's all right. She will go to some other village and try to help the people there. Please don't feel pressured. Think about it and get back to us. We will be back in 10 minutes. Grasping my hand tightly, he pulled me a short distance away. Why did you say all that? I asked. You should have first told them about things like the dangers of AIDS. Don't be foolish. We will tell them about it some other time. If you start with something negative, then nobody will like it. The first introduction should always be positive and bring real hope to the beneficiaries. And just like I have promised them, you must help their children get scholarships first. Work on AIDS later. And why did you tell them I am a teacher, Kaka? I demanded. You could have said I was a social worker. My father offered a calm rebuttal. They consider teaching to be one of the most respectable jobs, and you are a professor, aren't you? I nodded reluctantly, still unsure of his strategy. When we went back, the women were ready to listen. They called me Akkas or elder sister in Kannada. So I started working with them to help their children secure the promised scholarships. Some of these children even started going to college within a year. Only after this happened did I bring up the subject of AIDS, and this time they heard me out. Months went by. It took me almost 3 years to establish a relationship with them. I was their darling Akka, and eventually they trusted me enough to share their heart-touching stories and the trials they had endured. Innocent girls had been sold into the trade by their husbands, brothers, fathers, boyfriends, uncles, or other relatives. Some entered the sex trade on their own, hoping to earn some money for their families and help future generations escape poverty. Still others were lured into it with promise of a real job, only to find themselves tricked to work as sex workers. Hearing their stories, there were moments when I couldn't hide my tears. Yet, they were the one who held my hand and consoled me. Each story was different, but the end was the same. They all suffered at the hands of the society that exploited them and filled them with guilt and shame as a final result. I realized that simply donating money would not bolster their confidence or build their self esteem. The best solution I could think of was to unite them towards a common goal by helping them build their own organization. The state government of Karnataka had many good policies that encouraged housing, marriage schemes, and scholarships. But if we started an association or union exclusively for the Devadasis, they could address each other's problems. In time, they would become bold and independent, learning to organize themselves in the process. Thus, an organization for the Devadasi was formed. I believe that God cannot be present everywhere at once, and in return, He sends people to do His work. Abhay Kumar, a kind-hearted and idealistic young man from Delhi, joined us unexpectedly. He wanted to work with me, and so I decided to give him the toughest job in order to test his passion for social work. I told Abhay, if you work with the Devadasi for 8 months and survive, I will think about absorbing you into the project full time. As promised, he did not show up for 8 months, and then one day he confidently strolled into my office, a little thinner but grinning from ear to ear. I said, Abhay, now you know how hard social work is. It takes extreme commitment and persistence to keep going. You can go back to Delhi with the satisfaction of having made a difference to so many lives. You are a good human being, and I'm sure that this little experience will stay with you and help you later. He smiled and replied in impeccable Kannada. Who said that I wanted to go back to Delhi? I have decided to stay in Karnataka and complete this project. Abhay, this is serious work. You are young, and that's a greatest disadvantage in this line of work. And my voice faded away. I didn't know what else to say. Don't worry about that, ma'am. You gave me the best job I could possibly have. I thought that you might give me a desk job. I never imagined that you would give me field work. That too, the privilege of working with the Devadasis. This past year has made me realize their agony and unbearable hardship, knowing how can I ever work anywhere apart from here. I was astonished at such sincerity and compassion in one so young. I offered him a stipend to help with the expenses, but he stopped me with a show of his hand. I don't need that much. I already have a scooter and a few sets of clothes. I just need 2 meals a day, a roof over my head, and a little money for petrol. I gazed at him fondly and knew that I was seeing a man who had found his purpose in life. He bid goodbye and left my office with determined strides. Obviously, Abhay became the project. I supported him wholeheartedly, taking care to converse with him regularly about the project progress. One day, I met with the Devadasi and inquired about the welfare of their children. Our greatest difficulty is supporting our children's education, they said. Most of the time, we can't afford their school fees, and then we have to go back to what we know to get money quickly. We will take care of all your children's educational expenses, irrespective of which class they are in. But that means you must not continue being a Devadasi, no matter what, I replied firmly. The woman agreed without hesitation. They had come to trust Abhay and me and knew that we would keep our word. Hundreds of children were enrolled in the project. Some went on to the professional courses while others went on to complete their primary, middle or high school classes. We held camp on AIDS awareness and prevention and sponsored street art and plays to educate the women and children on various medical issues, including the simple fact that infected hair is not an indication that one must become a Devadasi. Rather, it is a simple curable disease that causes the hair to stick together and become matted over time. The women got themselves treated, and some of them even had their heads shaved. Eventually, we were able to get them loans by becoming their guarantors. Often, the woman would tell me, Akka, please help us get loan. If we can't repay it, then it is as good as cheating you, and you know that we will never do that. By this time, I knew in my heart that a rich man might cheat me, but our Devadasis would never. They had great faith in me and I in them. On the other hand, life became more dangerous for Abhay and me. We received death threats from pimps, local goons, and others through phone calls, letters, and messages. I was scared more for Abhay than myself. Though I asked for police protection, Abhay flatly refused and said, Our Devadasis will protect me. Don't worry about me. A few weeks later, some pimps threw acid on 3 Devadasis who had left their profession, but we all still refused to give. The plastic surgery the victims underwent helped to bring back their confidence. They would not be intimidated. Our strength came from these women who were collectively trying to leave their hated profession. Though the government supplemented their income, many also started rearing goats, cows, and buffaloes. Over time, we established small schools that offered night classes, which our Devadasis would attend. It was an uphill battle that took years of effort from everybody involved. After 12 years, some of the women met me to discuss a particular issue. Akka, we want to start a bank, but we are afraid to do it on our own. What do you think happens in a bank? I asked. Well, you need a lot of money to start a bank or even have an account. You must wear expensive clothes. We have seen the bankers usually wear suits and ties and sit in air conditioned offices. But we don't have money for such things, Akka. After they brought their problems to our attention, Abhay and I sat down with the women and explained the basics of banking to them. A few professionals were consulted, and under their guidance, they started a bank with the exception of a few legal and administrative services that we provided. However, we insisted that the bank employees and shareholders should be restricted only to the Devadasi community. So, finally, the women were able to save money through fixed deposit and obtain low interest. All profits had to be shared with the bank members. Eventually, the bank grew and the women themselves became its directors and took over its running. Less than 3 years later, the bank had rupees 80 lakh in deposit and provided employment to former Devadasis. But its most important achievement was that almost 3,000 women were out of the Devadasi system. On the third anniversary, I received a letter from the bank. We are very happy to share that 3 years have passed since the bank was started. Now, the bank is of sound financial health and none of us practice or make any money through the Devadasi tradition. We have each paid 100 rupees and have 3 lakh saved for a big celebration. We have rented out a hall and arranged lunch for everyone. Please come and join us for our big day. Akka, you are very dear to us and we want you to be our chief guest for the occasion. You have traveled hundreds of times at your own cost and spent endless money for our sake, even though we are strangers. This time we want to book a round trip, air conditioned Volvo bus ticket, a good hotel, and all expenses paid trip for you. Our money has been earned legally, ethically, and morally. We are sure that you won't refuse our humble and earnest request. Tears welled up in my eyes. 17 years ago, chappals were my reward, but now they want to pay for my travel to the best of their ability. I knew how much the comfort of an air-conditioned Volvo bus and a hotel meant to them. I decided to attend the function at my own expense. On the day of the function, I found that there were no politicians or garlands or long speeches. I found that there was no politicians or garlands or long speeches as was typical. It was a simple event. At first, some women sang a song of agony written by the Devadasis. Then another group came and described their experiences on their journey to independence. Their children, many of whom had become doctors, nurses, lawyers, clerks, government employees, teachers, railway employees, and bank officers, came and thanked their mothers and the organization for supporting their education. And then it was my turn to speak. I stood there and my words suddenly failed me. My mind went blank, and then distantly I remembered my father's words. I will feel very proud knowing that I gave birth to a daughter who helped 10 helpless women make the most difficult transition from being sex workers to independent women. I am usually a spontaneous speaker, but on that day I was too choked with emotion. I didn't know where to begin. For the first time in my life, I felt that the day I meet God, I will be able to stand up straight and say confidently, "You have given me a lot this lifetime, and I hope that I have returned at least something. I have served 3,000 of your children in the best way I could, relieving them of the meaningless and cruel Devadasi system. Your children are your flowers, and I am returning them to you." Then my eyes fell on the women. They were so eager to listen to me. They wanted to hear what I had to say. Abhay was there too, looking overwhelmed by everything they had done for us. I quoted a Sanskrit shloka my grandfather had taught me when I was 6 years old. "Oh God, I don't need a kingdom, nor do I desire to be an emperor. I don't want rebirth or a golden vessels or heaven. I don't need anything from you. Oh Lord, if you want to give me something, then give me a soft heart and hard hands so that I can wipe the tears of others." Silently, I came back to my chair. I didn't know what the woman must be thinking or feeling at that moment. An old Devadasi climbed up on the stage and stood there proudly. With a firm voice, she said, "We want to give our Akka a special gift. It is an embroidered bedspread, and each of us has stitched some portion of it. So, there are 3,000 stitches. It may not look beautiful, but we all wanted to be present in this bedspread." Then she looked straight at me and continued, "This is from our hearts to yours. This will keep you cool in the summer and warm in the winter, just like our affection towards you. You were by our side during our difficult times, and we want to be with you too. It is the best gift that I have ever received."